In this CBT techniques video, we're going to be going over the technique of guessing a thought. Now, a lot of times when clients are coming in, they're going to be extremely emotionally dysregulated. They're going to be very much in their feeling self. They might have a lot of urges to act, whether it's the action is very extreme, explosive, or maybe their urge to act is to stay still. Maybe they're approaching disassociation. So what you're observing when the client's coming in here is whatever manifestation this is, oftentimes they're not rooted in what they're thinking. Now again, the CBT model is that thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, beliefs, are going to be interacting with one another. And by rooting a client in all three, being able to connect the dots, how a thought leads to an emotion, how a belief leads to an urge to act. By closing in this triangle, well, you're going to be able to center the client and be able to open up different possibilities, more adaptive things to do in rough situations to really help your client out. So you kind of imagine, client comes in, they're pretty upset, something terrible's happened, let's say that they were fired, but they can't articulate what the thought is. What you're going to want to do is offer suggestions. Now you're going to be very careful with how you offer suggestions of what they're thinking, because you're running the risk of suggestion. Therapists have a tremendous power in influencing clients, and well, that's why therapy works. We as therapists, we want to use that for the good. But we also have to be painfully aware that we have the potential to plant thoughts that weren't there, to trigger feelings that had nothing to do with the situation. There are some dots that shouldn't be connected. And so using this skill, you have to use a fair amount of judgment and hesitation before you make the calls you do. Another part of this skill to keep in mind is, well, you do not want to be putting yourself in the role of being in the client's head. Only you, the therapist, know what they're really thinking. You don't want to take that role. We're not trying to uncover unconscious thoughts, even though they may very well be there. That's not the goal of a CBT therapist necessarily. Again, in your own clinical work, you can make that sort of call, make those sorts of judgments. But as far as this model is concerned, you're wanting to provide a very simple skill set to your clients that is not so complicated that they can reproduce in their own home, in their own lived experience. And it is worthwhile exploring the unconscious, just not with this technique. And instead, what you're trying to build is being able to become more in touch that when certain emotions are coming up, when certain urges to act are coming up, what's the thought there? What might be motivating those two on the CBT triangle that empower, that trigger, that hike up the intensity, the valence of those other two sides of the triangle. So kind of getting back to that scenario, client just lost his job. He's furious. Okay, he can identify he's angry. So saying something like, well, what would you suppose would be an appropriate thought that would accompany that feeling? Or, you can, as the therapist, on your own, offer maybe more straightforward, common thoughts that a person would have in that sort of situation. I feel betrayed. I am in disbelief. I can't believe he did this. He's such a jerk. You don't have to necessarily be afraid of offering negative thoughts, because once you've identified those thoughts, you're going to want to then go to the next step of being able to manage those. But for right now, this is more a type of an assessment when clients come in this sort of situation, number one. But number two, yes, this is its own technique where you are developing with your client the ability to link his feelings with his thoughts. Some possible problems that'll come up using this technique are going to be number one, like I said, you don't want to plant thoughts that aren't there. Another problem is that a client might be so overwhelmed by the emotions they're having that they're going to have a hard time doing anything else, that they won't be able to necessarily catch the thoughts they're having. So what you're going to want to do there is help the client to more emotionally dysregulate. Not all the way, because you want to have that emotion still present to be able to then link that emotion with thought. Because again, your goal is demonstrating to the client, well, the thoughts are there and they are increasing this experience, and the way you think can help you in your life. So you don't want to lose the feeling entirely, because then you lose the thought. Another problem you might have is a denial. No, there's no thoughts. It's only feelings. And there it might be helpful to have the patient close his or her eyes and reimagine the scenario they just went through, and to allow them the opportunity to catch those thoughts in their reliving that experience. And again, you're going to want to be careful that in situations where it's too emotionally overwhelming, you don't want the client to disassociate or become triggered. But again, you want to be able to find that window, that tension, that sweet spot where you have the emotions, and being able to connect those to the thoughts that are there. And again, once you have those thoughts, it's worthwhile then shifting into techniques like reality testing, or something like the thought descent technique, where you're going to then be able to drive towards what are the underlying beliefs and schemas behind that thought. In terms of being fired, being angry at the boss might very well lead towards no one ever loves me, or I'm not worthy, I'm unimportant. And you're going to want to get to those, because at the end of the day, it's those underlying schemas, those beliefs about oneself, that are behind the high intensity of the emotions. And the last problem is, in the opposite direction that I've been discussing in this video, is, well, sometimes a feeling is just a feeling. And, it makes sense to be angry being fired. And you don't have to fish for trouble where you don't have to. And making distinctions there also is worthwhile with the client, that you can develop a sense, well, that feelings and being angry and all that stuff, well, that just makes sense. You're not weird, you're not abnormal, anybody would be angry. And counterintuitively, by accepting the feeling and encouraging the client that, hey, it's okay to just have the feeling, you're simultaneously giving the client permission to think about it more. Oh, well, if it's normal, okay, well, I guess if anybody would be angry at the boss, man, well, yeah, that you'll find the client then going and saying, yeah, well, God, I think that guy's a jerk, or, I really failed at that job. I know I could have done better. That once they have permission to have a normal feeling, then magically, oftentimes, thoughts start coming, and there you can get into the work. I hope this video was helpful. If you like it, go ahead and give it a like and share it with your friends. You can leave a comment in the comment box, or check out my website and shoot me an email, or support my work on Patreon. I'll see you in the next video.